Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Led by Life. We're your hosts. I'm Rafaela and this is Hannah. And we're just going to get right into it today. That's how I'm feeling.
I feel also nervous. I don't know why.
Yeah. It's like we hadn't already done 14, 16 of these?
15. This is our 16th.
16th. Okay. Yeah. Right. I was like, wait, I know it's a number above the gene key that we talk about, but not really here or there. Welcome. If you've been here before, Hannah and I talk about human design, life experiences, the gene keys, and just kind of how it all really goes into our experiment of working with human design and the things that we encounter in life. So here we are. And I guess one thing that I'll start and say is that one thing we experimented with last time, Hannah and I, was allowing ourselves to just kind of have more of a flowy conversation and not get so caught up in the fact that we're recording ourselves, because it's very different when you there's this knowing that you're being recorded, as opposed to then when you just allow yourself to flow in dialogue with a person about any of these things that we talk about.
Yeah, it kind of takes it away a little bit from the natural flow of the conversation. But how else are we supposed to capture it? We have to record it, but it's just learning to not think about it, forget that we are recording. And we were saying just before we jumped on about how this is probably a manifestor shadow for us to overcome, is worrying about how it's being perceived, what we're sharing, what we're saying, who's listening. Letting go of any outcomes, letting go of attachment to any outcomes is a real manifestor lesson, I think. So we're working on it. We're doing it right here and now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, just because I feel at times that I have to be as transparent as possible. And I know that, Hannah, you record and your significant other will be in the house, Alex will be in the house doing whatever. But I haven't ever really recorded with Travis being really in the same room, so to speak, or more or less as close as we are now, given that our home is a little different than it was in Florida. And so I was telling him earlier, I was like, I kind of feel like I'm going to have an audience. And for all I know, he probably can't even hear me, has headphones in, or maybe he can. I honestly don't even know. But I think that for me today, there's also this oh, someone is actually probably listening to me. And it's very different.
It's that there could be someone listening in. It makes you kind of think about, or in a way filter yourself a little. I think that's just natural. I think everyone experiences that, but yeah, it's a good practice.
Yeah. And it's just funny because I do essentially what you and I do. We have honest, open conversations about life. I do that for a living, either one-on-one or in a group of people. And so it's so interesting to me how in every situation, it's there's a different presentation that I come with, given that each thing has sort of a different environment.
Yeah.
But I talk in front of people all the time.
Yeah, and I suppose this is part of our journey of really expressing our authentic selves, is learning to just show up not the same way. Of course, we're going to flow and move differently when we're in front of different audiences, or depending on the other energy exchanges that are happening with whoever we're around and interacting with. But I guess the goal is to be as authentic as we can be in any given moment. That's kind of the whole point of this work, isn't it? That's my belief, a big part of this. self-discovery work, working with human design, working with the gene keys, is like, how can I be the most me in any environment, in any situation?
Yeah. As you were saying that, I had this feeling, it
Mm,
goes along with like imagery as well, memories or whatever, but it's this feeling, and I've heard people refer to this before, and I've referred to it before, of like the startup when you're in a therapy session, or look, any kind of therapy where you're about to sit down and have a conversation one-on-one with someone. You're about to get into some things and you don't know like how deep those things really are going to go or what's going to happen. But there's this like awkward sort of intro transition of like, well, how's the weather? Or just kind of like really mundane, not anything. And this sort of for me has that feel.
mm,
It's, yeah, I just kind of like got that feeling like, okay, we're kind of like warming up into whatever we're going to get into. And this stuff, while it's not necessary to talk on, and I could also in this moment really feel myself like kind of doing that small talk kind of thing before you get into it.
mm. All right, well, let's dive straight in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
what are we exploring today?
we are on Gene Key 15. And Hannah has this. She has
Yeah,
this energy defined in her human design chart. It comes out of the sacral, right?
no,
No, no,
it
no.
G center. Yeah, so it
Yeah.
connects to the sacral through the channel of rhythm, the 515, and you have the 5 Rafa and I have the 15. So together we make this channel, which I'm really excited to talk about. And yeah, it's part of my incarnation cross, the vessel of love. It is in my design sun. I kept
Mhm.
thinking it was my design earth, but no, it's my design sun. So it is a very prominent gate in my chart, and it's the gate of extremes.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was thinking the same thing about when I was going through like the readings and everything around this energy. It's like, oh, this is one of those that Hannah and I make up together.
Mm.
And mine's the gate of fixed patterns. This is the 15, well, the 5, the 15 then is the gate of extremes. Um, and I was gonna say, oh, it left my mind, but it'll come back. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, one thing I'll just point out while you think about that and let it come to you is I was just reading the bottom part of the 15th gate in the human design book, and it's saying, without gate 5's disciplined and fixed rhythm, you may find that your own constantly changing rhythms cause you to lose the focus you need to achieve mastery in some area of your life. And I feel like this is something that I have really struggled with, is kind of seeing things through sometimes to completion, or like finishing these things. So I have these like big ideas and I have all these different things and projects that I'm working on, and then I do sometimes find it hard to kind of see them through, and I get caught up in this constantly changing rhythm of my own energy, where I'm, taken in all different directions often, and sometimes it can be hard for me to kind of, yeah, see things through.
Yeah. I was what I had thought about when reading it was how you have been sharing with me, like, and this happens for myself too, but that you've experienced where like these really low lows and these really high highs, and whether it's in like emotion or like what you're doing or like creating or any of these things. And I was thinking about how this relates to kind of being on like the extreme ends of a particular of any spectrum. And I actually think that because it comes out of the identity center, that there's this, it talks about it, how there's this idea of there being a polarity.
Yeah.
With the fact that like this gate, the 15 makes up the vessel of love, which is like your incarnation cross. But all of these gates come out of the identity center, which in human design is known as like the magnetic monopole. So it's like the driver of the experience that we have. And, I think that sometimes, like for myself, I can see how, I don't know if I'm ever really on like extreme ends of things, but more that it's like constantly flowing in between them. Does that make sense?
I think so. And I've been reflecting on how you seem to be pretty consistent with your patterns, with your rhythms, with your daily routines and your rituals. You're pretty good at kind of sticking to those things and having that consistency. And I notice that in you. Whereas it feels like for me, I often do kind of move through these ups and downs. And there is a level of consistency. I also have my 4 arrows are all facing left. I'm a quad left. So I do have a level of like consistency in how I like to operate. But yeah, there definitely feels like a bit more extreme. And then I suppose you're just flowing in the middle. It's almost, that you think about these big ups and downs. Right. And then you're kind of like a little bit more flowing in between.
Yeah. And it's
from both.
Yeah, I think so, because like obviously the 5 and the 15 make up a channel. It's the design of flow.
Channel of rhythm.
The channel of rhythm. Right.
Yeah, a design of being in the flow. Yeah, you're right.
And this is where so what I was going to share with you and with everyone is that last week we were, and today might even be the last day of it, transiting through the 15th.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was voice noting him, and I was telling her, I was like, we're transiting through the 15th and we're on like the 15th gene key and we're going to talk about it. And, it's honestly kind of probably best that like our episode date of like today of recording this is on the tail end of 15. Because, as you're talking about how like I seem to have this more subtle wave, which I think is true. Last week, I felt as if I hit an edge of an experience that I just can't really relate to right now of any other kind of experience. Like I was incredibly irritable, like very irritable. And then at one point almost felt like really, really depressed. And it was like a real wave that like flooded over, and to the point where I had to like really step back from anything I was doing for a whole day. I just had to my authority then took me to a place where I was like, what do I need right now? And I was like, I need to just be home. And so I did that. But thinking back about like the 15th energy and it being like a shadow frequency of dullness, and thinking to last week how I did sort of feel stuck in the rhythm of way things had been going for me in my morning routine, in how I'm going to bed at night, in the way I'm operating throughout the day, like where I'm physically at right now. Everything just sort of hit me like none of it made sense. And it just manifested in this like irritability and depression. That's all that I really feel that I kind of bounced back and forth with last week, were these kind of two emotional states or whatever. And
Pretty extreme as well, would you say?
yeah, absolutely. And so then the other thing that I wanted to point out was that while we were in this frequency, they talked about the Schumann resonance. And so I'm sitting there and I'm reading this and I'm realizing, like, we transited through this last week. And I don't know if this came up for you on your social media, but it did for me when I was on it. And a few people had actually sent me post about the Schumann resonance at the frequency that was happening of Earth last week. And then I was like, how crazy that this is the gene keys kind of is this with human design, but I'm really specifically right now talking about the gene keys. It almost is like it has this blueprint of Earth. Whereas, like, I know that they say that like human design is like the blueprint of like your makeup, your energetic constitution, but I feel like the gene keys is sort of like a blueprint of life's experience, like the bigger, like Earth, the universe. I don't know, because it was just so crazy how synchronistic that just happened. And then it's in this, and for us it's summer, so the summer solstice happened, and then the things that it was talking about of like the dullness, and then the magnetism of I don't know, all of it. I can kind of like going in a circle right now, but it was just really sort of like kind of crazy.
Yeah, really synchronistic. It's interesting. I think it was probably reading the Gene Keys book last week that I got a bit curious about this Schumann resonance that he talks about. And I started listening to Schumann resonance frequency meditations, like binaural beat meditations on YouTube. Over the past week, I've been meditating to the Schumann resonance. So it's just interesting how it resonates at the moment. And I suppose it is all about like flowing with the rhythm of nature.
Yeah. It even talked about like how our attitude is sometimes very reflective of the weather patterns and the changes in our environment. And for the last, I would say, month, it's been more gray here in Southern California than it has been sunny. And I moved here and I'm like, it was really sunny when we first got here, and there was still a lot of excitement. And then it's like there was this crash. And with that crash came a lot of cloudiness. And it's still cool for the most part, compared to Florida. And it's cloudy, it's been gray. And I would say for the last month, like my physiology, my psychology, my emotions, everything has sort of just been really unclear, kind of cloudy, kind of like up and down. And it hasn't really all felt very consistent.
It's like it's been affecting your attitude.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the attitude part that he talks about? Because I loved it. Like, this really resonated. I highlighted a whole bunch of it.
I was sitting there reading it, and I think I was reading it out loud actually to Travis on the beach. And because him and I have been talking a lot about attitude too lately. And I was like, wow, I could underline this whole paragraph. So instead I just put a big box around the whole thing.
I did the same, this one here. I did
yeah. Wow.
Shall I just read a little bit of it?
Yeah.
So he talks about how, he talks about how all life forms experience this frequency of dullness, but we have, with our self-reflective awareness, we humans are capable of something truly magical and at the same time quite terrifying. We are capable of attitude. So he talks about how like a dog can just sit on a doorstep for hours and not get bored, whereas a human would have that attitude of this is boring, or this is dull, or this is mundane, and we'd create a story around the dullness. And he also talks about how two humans going through identical experiences can literally taste two entirely different worlds. One can be in heaven and the other in hell. Not only that, your attitude affects life's events, which is the first great law of magic. Experience mirrors attitude. Attitude is, in fact, one of the great mysteries of life because its source is indefinable. And it makes me think about like manifestation, like the law of attraction. And it's kind of interesting how the gift frequency is magnetism. And I suppose like how you're relating to your current situation, you know, they talk about in a lot of manifestation kind of rhetoric, they talk about this idea of like get into the feeling or the vibration or the frequency of what it is that you want to attract, and like feel the feeling of what it feels like to have what you want before you have it. So it's interesting because it's almost like shifting your attitude or your energy to be in that frequency without your current reality reflecting that. Because if you're just looking at what is in your current reality and being like, oh, well, I don't have the money, the resources, whatever it may be that you want to attract, that you want to manifest, you can just keep playing out that negative frequency, I suppose, or that that dullness or that feeling of lack, like I don't have what it is that I want.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. And it reminded me of like where I wanted to kind of pick up with before we even started, because what he also shares is that you can't transmute dullness until you fully accept the dullness. And I feel as if that's exactly what then was happening with me last week, until I was able to really allow myself to fully be with the fact that I was feeling depressed. Was I able to kind of move through that? And then ultimately, like the next thing for me to do was just to go to sleep. There was nothing more after that, but it kind of went through. And the next day when I had woken up, I checked in with my authority and I was like, what does my heart really need right now? And the moment that I got that answer and then acted on that answer, then the whole rest of my day was different. It was phenomenal. It was great. It was like I accepted that this is really what I needed in that moment. And when I vocalized it, when I informed that that's what it was, I then spent the rest of the day doing exactly what I wanted, totally in my own flow, uninterrupted.
Whereas if you had the attitude that like of guilt or of feeling like, oh, I shouldn't be doing what I want to do, then that would have completely colored your experience. So that like acceptance of and honoring of what it is that you needed, what your authority was telling you, allowed you to shift your attitude about the experience. Would you say?
That's what he then says, or like a foundational part of the Gene Keys is a teaching that nothing can really transition until you fully accept where you're at. Like the shadow has its purpose. And until we can accept that that's the frequency or the vibration, you know, just the energy that we're currently in, that's actually like the magic that allows you to then transition into the gift. And that's why I asked you when we were talking, like, are you resisting the resistance and making it harder for you to kind of go into whatever spontaneous flow you want to go into because of the judgment of like what you should or shouldn't be doing?
Yes. And this, something came to me before, is that I am in a period of what I would consider dullness, because I'm in this period of in between, which I've been in for a while now. And my partner and I made a decision that we're going to move. So we're going to be moving out of Melbourne, where we are right now. We're going to be moving to the country. And I've been feeling for a while now that I just want to change. Like, I just want to start a new chapter. I want to kind of put the past behind me and close off this chapter that I've been in. It's had so many beautiful lessons. It's had so much growth. I've been in this big void for a while now, where I've really had to kind of integrate a lot of these shadow aspects and really like sit with a lot of the discomfort that's been coming up. But I feel like now I'm in a place where I'm ready for something entirely new to come in. And what came to me before is, like, in resisting this period of quote unquote dullness, where I'm like waiting in a way, I'm kind of feeling like I know there's something new coming, something fresh, something exciting, but I'm not quite there yet. I need to like sit with that patience. Interestingly, actually, that the fifth gate is all about patience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I'm feeling myself resisting. I'm feeling myself a little impatient. It's like, yeah, accepting the dullness, accepting where I'm at right now in this phase is like perhaps what will create space for this next chapter and whatever it is that wants to come in to appear.
Well, and some key words that are popping out to me in relation to the 15th is attitude, growth, magnetism, which is the gift. And within magnetism, he actually mentions and refers to the law of attraction.
That's
what you were speaking about. And my point in that was to say that with your attitude towards what sort of is what allows you to grow. And I feel like that's what I'm recognizing has kind of been like a layer in a lot of the growth that I've had in myself, or the changes or the things that I've been able to manifest over, just the course of my experience. And especially with where I'm at currently right now, because lately I've just been still kind of working with this feeling of questioning myself and like this decision. And I've realized that maybe even for myself, have not allowed for there to be an adjustment period and accepting of that. Like, I kind of like came in and I had this, my job was sort of already lined up. And for the most part, like, we moved right into where we were living. And for me, it sort of seemed like my routines were kind of what helped me really transition. And in the last month, things haven't really felt so consistent within my routines. My emotions have been really like all over the place. And I haven't really allowed to myself to honor the fact that I actually might be homesick, that I actually may be missing my family. And I'm just sitting here kind of like thinking like, why am I feeling all these things? And why am I like so tired? And it's like so incredibly irritable and moody and all this stuff. And I think it's because I have this idea that because I've created this, the way in which I've created it, like it should just feel, I don't know how it should feel, but I have this sort of expectation of how it should feel. And I just don't think that I've allowed myself to be a little bit more graceful, which is something he also talks about in like the Siddhi of Florescence. And it's not something that he refers to, like Richard Rudd refers to, that it can just sort of like anybody can just do. It sort of just comes up. It shows up in light or whatever. And so, yeah, for myself, I've just realized that I don't know. It kind of lost.
Are you giving yourself the grace that you need right now in this period?
Yeah. To know that like I'm adjusting, not adjust. Yes, to know that I'm adjusting and that the next growth will come when it's like time for that. But sort of right now, it's just okay to just let this be as it is. But there was something I wanted to say about like, something I wanted to say more about like the growth aspect that comes with attitude, because I feel like that's like looking back, I feel like that's really what propelled a lot of the things that I, manifested or created to be where I am right now. Like being able to move out of Florida, being able to live in a city, making more money than I was before, working around people. That's what it was. I remember I had been saying all of these things that I wanted to do, creating this podcast. And all of these things were sort of like, my attitude towards them was one of like, I know it's not here right now, but this is what I want. And I allowed myself to like openly express that. And now here I am, and I'm just like, feeling all kinds of things, but I can go on in circles around it.
And I think I reflected back to you in a voice note this week that you are already doing the things that you want to be doing, that you've said you wanted to manifest, initiate, experience. Like you're already doing it. So it's our mind's idea of where we should be, where we think we should be on our journey, looking to other people, comparing ourselves to other people, and feeling like we're not doing or we're not where we need to be. But I think that this gate, I think all of the love gates in a way tell us that we are exactly where we need to be. And I again feel like they just speak to each other. Like the 15 is really about the love of humanity. It's about loving all kinds of behaviors, all kinds of human behaviors. And you spoke before about acceptance, like accepting the dullness, accepting the shadow frequency. And acceptance is the gift of the 25th gate. So I feel like these are really speaking to each other here. And 46 is all about being at the right place at the right time, in the right place at the right time. And it's also all about your attitude. I've just been diving deep into the 46 recently because it's my personality sun gate. And it really is about right place, right time, and right attitude, because you can be in the right place at the right time. It's all about serendipity. This idea of serendipity is being at the right place, in the right place at the right time, and having the right attitude, because you can't receive all of the good fortune that the 46 is really about if your attitude is not open to it. So you could be in the right place at the right time, but if your attitude is not open to receiving whatever fortune is there for you, you might miss it. You might not see it, right? So I think that's also speaking to this. They're all speaking to each other. And the 46 is also about loving the journey, like knowing that life is a journey. It's not about getting somewhere. It's about the journey and loving all of the different experiences that the body experiences. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. And you also mentioned about growth. You talked about growth, and it was interesting before I was looking at, so I have the 15 in the fifth line. So it's a 15.5. And I was reading up on the line, and it's all about growth. It's about growing through the extreme experiences. Let me just have a look. The ability to the power to grow, the capacity of the self to grow through experiencing the extremes. And I do, like when I look back on my life, I do feel like I've been through a lot of extremes. I've been through a lot of ups and downs, and also a lot of challenging experiences. And I do have the channel of initiation, which is all about, going through these challenging experiences. But through everything, I feel like it's always been in a bid to help me grow and to expand and to really connect with like the depth of my spirit, which is a big part of the vessel of love, I think, as well.
I have two things. One is the way you said that sort of struck me back to the beginning of our conversation, where we were kind of like saying how I have like a smaller, more subtle wave, and yours can be more, having an extreme end to it. And the way you had said that you've gone through some pretty extreme like things in life made me think about what I would qualify the experiences in my life to be extreme. It's funny, they don't really have like a strong immediate onset. I feel like the way it hit me just now was like they've all kind of been gradual. I don't know, a very interesting thing to kind of notice.
They feel a bit more subtle
And gradual, like they don't, like I can compare it to like when people think of trauma and they think of like, well, I'm thinking like of a car accident. I'm thinking maybe like your experiences have felt like a car accident, and mine sort of have felt like a 17-hour labor of birthing a child kind of thing, and I don't know if that has anything to do with like you having the 15th and me having the 5th, and like, whatever that whatever this dialogue is creating between like our own energy exchanges right now. But I just wanted to share that, like the way you had shared your experience, I've never sort of had that kind of like thought before of like, oh, the things that I feel like I've gone through have kind of been this like gradual, consistent thing that then at one point maybe had like a real blow up in it, or something really like bursted. But then I was also curious, like you having the vessel of love, you having this incarnation cross and the 15th gate defined, like how do you relate to it the most?
The 15th or the vessel?
Yeah, the 15th.
Well, I'll just mention what I was thinking before quickly, before I answer that. So I also have the gate of shock, the 51, which I think it's all kind of, I mean, this is really what I'm beginning to learn, or what I'm seeing more and more as I learn more about my human design, is just how there's all these different forces working together that make me. And so I guess that's where it's really nice to dive deep into each of these gates and these energies and the gene keys to see all the different flavors of how things are playing out in our human experience. So yes, I do have these like shocking experiences that do feel extreme. And I do have a way, I think, of navigating these challenges and these extremes. Or perhaps it's the way that I relate to them that I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I'm able to kind of see the lesson in it, see the growth, see what it is that's perhaps not when I'm directly in it. It's hard and it's challenging, but on the other side, I can feel a great sense of appreciation for those challenging experiences. Yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to say?
Well, something came to me, but I don't know if it totally like relates, because I was wondering if this has anything to do with the fact that so sorry, with the fact that, and not that there's a good or a bad about this, but I wonder if sometimes these things feel shocking to you, or that they like they have this shock because maybe throughout your chart there is this quality of like impatience, which is just, the 5th too. Like the 5th, yes, there's the gift is patience, but the shadow is impatience, where I feel like sometimes maybe for me, there's a difference between like when you can be patient with something and then when you can be my idea sometimes is being patient with something, but really I'm just allowing it to continue.
Like tolerance.
Yes,
Patience.
exactly. But these are sort of things that that are coming to me. And really with what you said of how there are all these forces working. And I think that's evident if you ever decide, for anybody who's listening, to go through the gene keys and read the spiritual text, you'll realize, and what I've realized is that throughout each chapter, throughout each energy, there are so many other energies that are also working at play. And I think that that's what he goes into with like the codon rings. It's never just one singular energy working on its own.
And then there's programming partners, and then there's the channels that are working, and then there's the different people you're interacting with, and then there's the different planetary what do you call it? Transition?
Transits. Well, and that's so true because, you know, it's that phrase that we are all one. And this is really relevant actually to the vessel of love incarnation cross. This idea that like underneath it all, life, he refers to this in the 15th gate, is that life is meaningless. Which is kind of just crazy to say, right? Because I don't fully even understand how that could be a truth. But also another one being that we are all one.
I think life is meaningless, but that's what also makes life meaningful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want me to answer that question about, you asked me something before, I've forgotten how you worded it.
How do you relate to the 15th gift?
I think I've always attracted in extreme human behaviors and extreme personalities, and I've always had a way of being quite accepting of those different behaviors. And I'm really not one to hold a grudge. I'm really not one to kind of, like, I find it quite easy to see or to draw on compassion for other people and other people's behaviors. And this is something I think even as a child, I was always attracting in all kinds of different friends and friendship dynamics. And I was always the person that everyone would come to fix their problems, and would always like, I think it's the fifth line as well, the 15 being in the fifth line, it has this projection field, and the fifth line is all about being the helper and the fixer and the problem solver. And so, and it has this projection field where people are kind of projecting onto me to help them and to fix their problems and to kind of be this hero, as you know, being the 2-5 profile. So I have, ever since I can remember, had all these kind of extreme friendship dynamics, and always felt like I want to kind of help other people and felt like it's my role to. And I'm learning now that it's not my role to fix people, but I think in just learning to accept all kinds of different behaviors and learning to like show people that it's okay to be and experience all of the different ways that they are, or the I don't really know how to say this. Like, I think I can be an example of accepting all kinds of behaviors, including accepting ourselves, accepting the different parts of ourselves and the extreme emotions and the extreme experiences that we might go through. And I suppose also, again, like my having a completely open solar plexus I can be a source of wisdom in that way, of showing people that it's okay to experience all the different emotions that they're experiencing. But it is something that I am still learning, is to not take on other people's emotions and feelings, and not to feel responsible for what other people are feeling. This is something that I'm really learning, is to be that compassionate, loving support through whatever people are going through, but to not take it on, because I really do feel other people's emotions, and I'm very highly sensitive to how other people are feeling. So that's a lesson that I'm working through, is to like stay in my power, to not let other people influence me so much.
Do you feel like, how is it for you to talk about gates or an energy that you have defined within your chart?
On the one hand, sometimes it's hard to see it in yourself, because it is just like this natural gift that you have. And I'm not saying this to be like, oh, look how amazing I am, I can be so compassionate and loving and accepting of all kinds of human behaviors, but it is something that can sometimes be harder to see in yourself when you have that defined, I think. And so it's like interacting with other people can help reflect those gifts back to you. But it is also something that I definitely resonate with as I'm learning. I'm like, yeah, I feel like I do have that capacity. And also we flow between all the different frequencies, right? That's what I love about the gene keys, is it's not a fixed thing, like you're embodying this or you're not. It's like you're flowing between these different frequencies. And as you become more aware, and as you decondition, you're able to embody that higher frequency more often.
Yeah, I just asked because I know that for myself, like when we've covered a gene key that I have defined in my chart, I feel as if it's harder for me to articulate that, of like how it is, because again, we both have twos in our profile, it being sort of a natural, and it can be hard to describe in words something that just sort of happens for us. Now I wouldn't say effortlessly, but that just comes more natural. And so then to try to describe it sometimes can be, for myself, difficult. And I don't know if you've experienced that same thing with just kind of our conversation of, going through an energy gate that you have defined too.
Well, I feel like I haven't been articulating myself as well as I'd like to in this conversation. And I've had the voice come up a few times, like getting in my head and overthinking. And, I'm just working on not listening to that voice so much. But maybe I'll just say then, at least like with the vessel of love, I was reflecting back on when I first learned this about myself, when I first kind of pulled up my human design chart, and I had no idea what it was, and it's just a bunch of numbers and words and this weird looking image of a body graph. And can you remember when you first looked at your chart and you're like, what is this?
Not mine, but I remember when I first saw one. Yeah, but anyway, go ahead.
But the first thing, when I read the vessel of love, I was like, yeah, like I just know this. I just feel like this deep connection with this incarnation cross. And it is a journey of letting go of what my mind thinks a vessel of love is, or the purpose of the vessel of love, or the purpose of all these energies, like letting go of what my mind thinks that is, and just trusting that as I continue to go through this journey, it will just become, it's like the incarnation cross just kind of flowers out of this journey, I think. And so I do feel deeply connected to it, but at the same time, I'm learning to not mentally connect with it and to instead observe it as it unfolds, as it flowers. Yeah.
I feel like that's just a really soft, sweet way to allow yourself to be in the journey.
Mm. Yeah. I'd love to hear your reflection of this energy or of the incarnation cross and how you've seen it in me as we've become friends and gotten to know each other.
Yeah. Well, I will say that when we have like when you and I are just talking about, what you're here to do, or yeah, really when it's like what you're here to do, like when we have those kind of discussions, I feel like the same thing that always comes up for me is like there's these words that come out and want to say, like, just allow yourself to be in whatever it is that you want to do in that moment, like whatever makes you feel connected to yourself in that moment. And it's crazy because I could see how on one hand it's like, well, how is that going to like get me anywhere? Maybe. And it's funny because the 15th Gene Key also talks about ordinariness and how just as humans, like we may try to like resist ordinariness, and yet it's also such so what's it called, like mysterious or mystical for us to actually just allow ourselves to be human. Like that everything doesn't have to necessarily have like such profound effects or lavish experiences, and that simply driving to the store or doing the dishes or cleaning your house or allowing yourself to like sit on your bed and read a book, like all of those things can be very spiritual if you allow them to be, if your attitude towards them is something of connectedness and not judgment. So I feel like that's really what I'm kind of coming to with the 15th, is that growth can also happen, flowering can also happen with dull moments present if you allow yourself to just accept that that's what that moment is calling for. Because like I've been noticing, and like we've said before, everything is always so transitory. And of course, unless like with the repressive nature of this, which I don't remember how he referred to it, you can feel stuck. But even if you feel stuck, totally sinking into the feeling of like, I have no idea like which way to move right now. Just that loving awareness of that moment then transmutes something within you where you'll then know what it is you want to do, be, say, or feel in, the next then moment. So, I just, maybe it's just me kind of like talking to myself right now of like, everything's okay. Like everything's okay. And just because you don't know like what's going to happen in any near future doesn't mean that that right now things sort of just being more mundane, more very routine, more sort of structured doesn't mean that growth can't happen out of this too. Because I think that as I'm talking it out loud right now, a part of me is resisting being back, contrary to a couple episodes where I was talking about how 9 to 5 is, has done all these great things for me right now. When, whatever it is I was saying, I'm in a very different feeling in the last week or two of actually being very resistant to this is where I'm at.
Mm.
And I think that once I can allow myself to accept that my life isn't the way it has been the last 3 years, that my lifestyle is going to be a little bit different now, that who knows what can come out of this. But I think that that's where my irritability and my depression was coming out of, just this deep, like, questioning of what in the hell did I just do?
Mm. Which
And
goes against your nature and goes against your spirit, and like part of you that is so trusting in the flow of life. And I think that this is something for all of us to learn, is to just come back to the present moment and be like, I am where I am, and can I observe whatever I'm feeling and experiencing and going through, and can I observe my mind stories that it's creating around this experience and not be attached to it,
right.
and be with it and accept it. And like that relationship to the dullness, that relationship to whatever's happening, that attitude, like, can I shift my attitude to acceptance rather than resistance?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I feel like it ended so lovely.
Well, I think that's what this gene key is all about, is like teaching us that, you know, it's all part of the human experience, and to be okay with all of it, to love all of it, and to embrace whatever magic or whatever magnetism can come from the seemingly dull aspects of life.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah, for sharing your reflections of how the 15th is for you, having it defined.
Well, I am in my head, if I'm being honest. I am in my head, and I'm just observing it. I'm just noticing it. There's always a little bit of pressure, I think, when there's something that you feel a bit more intimate with. There's a little bit more pressure because you want to do it justice. Like, this has been a feeling that I've had through a lot of our conversations. I felt the pressure when there's a prominent gate that you have in your chart to do it justice, to really give it the time that it deserves. But I think that, I think that this is just like this process we're in.
For sure. Yeah. But I will say I oftentimes get really excited just at the thought of what it'd be like in its completion.
Me too. Yeah.
Like what growth or flowering will just, I think a little bit happens and occurs whether we're aware of it or not, like consciously aware of it or not, each time we take, the space to explore something that's just very important to us, and to see how it will all come about. I don't know, it's exciting to me.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and to see the patterns, how so many of the shadow frequencies are similar. They've just got a different flavor, but they're similar. And then the same with the gift, and the same with the Siddhi. Like, I was going to say earlier, this dullness, this emptiness of the 15th shadow feels so similar to many of the other gene keys that we've explored. The entropy of the first, and then I can't think of the names of all the others, but they just feel like, I mean, they're on a similar frequency, right? They're on a similar kind of wavelength. So it's interesting. Like, we're really diving deep into this, but I'll stop talking now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's often referred to, the last thing I'll say is like the spectrum of consciousness. And so it makes sense to me why, like, for you and even for myself, there's this like fluidity that goes through all of it, because it's never just stand still in one place. So yeah, everyone, Right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk soon.